Alrighty, so we've gone through the NXT takeover, which was the night before SummerSlam this year, but let's take a look and see what went down in SummerSlam 2019 for the summer. And we kick things off with the Cruiserweight Championship match between Drew Gallows and what, of course, this would lead to the matchup for the Cruiserweight Championship, where Duke Gallows would defeat Onesie Lance to remain the Cruiserweight Champion in the during SummerSlam. And eventually, this would then throw itself into Buddy Murphy taking on Apollo Crews by disqualification ends up defeating Apollo Crews by disqualification due to Eric Rowan attacking him during the match. Eventually, this would then lead to a moment where Edge would return to SummerSlam to spear Elias, getting the fans wild because that's what Edge is good at. We all love Edge, and it's great to see he came back for SummerSlam in his hometown. Eventually, this would then lead to the Women's Tag Team Championship, which Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross won prior to this event, would take on the Iconics, the ones they took it from, and eventually would successfully defeat the Iconics to remain the Women's Tag Team Champions. Then we would lead ourselves to a submission match between Becky Lynch and Natalya, which would lead to Becky Lynch submitting Natalya and remaining the Raw Women's Champion. Then we would have, now originally it was going to be The Miz versus Dolph Ziggler in a one-on-one match, but however though, Shawn Michaels changed took The Miz out of the match and decided to give Dolph Ziggler Goldberg instead for SummerSlam, which led to Goldberg crushing Dolph Ziggler and coming out on top in Toronto. So yes, Goldberg would show up for SummerSlam, beating Dolph Ziggler and obviously at least get himself a win in 2019 despite losing to The Undertaker a few months prior. Then we would have the United States Championship rematch between AJ Styles and Ricochet, which would then lead to AJ Styles defeating Ricochet and remaining the United States Champion during SummerSlam. Then we would have the anticipated match between Ember Moon and Bayley, which would then lead to Bayley defeating Ember Moon and remaining the SmackDown Women's Champion. Then we would have the long-awaited rivalry between Kevin Owens and Shane McMahon to kick in, as Kevin Owens would beat Shane McMahon. And by the way, there was a stipulation that if Kevin Owens didn't win, he would have to leave WWE. He was successfully able to beat Shane McMahon, and it would lead to Kevin Owens basically remaining, his career would remain intact. Then we would have the Dream Women's match between Charlotte Flair and Trish Stratus. Yes, Trish Stratus would challenge Charlotte Flair to a one-on-one match at SummerSlam, which would then lead to Charlotte Flair submitting Trish Stratus and Charlotte Flair beating Trish Stratus one-on-one at SummerSlam. Then we would have the matchup between Randy Orton and Kofi Kingston for the WWE Championship, which would obviously end in a double count-out due to the fact they were both counted out during the match. Then we would see the return of Bray Wyatt, known as the Fray, as he would bring his new gimmick to SummerSlam to take on Finn Balor, and it would lead to Finn Balor losing to Bray Wyatt as Bray Wyatt's new gimmick starts to take over Monday Night Raw. And eventually that would lead to the rematch from WrestleMania between Brock Lesnar and Seth Rollins, which would once again a repeat of WrestleMania where Seth Rollins would beat Brock Lesnar once again to reclaim the Universal Championship from Brock Lesnar. So, yep, Seth Rollins rounds the night by beating Brock and taking the remaining, winning back the Universal Championship from the Beast. So that is indeed the events of SummerSlam for 2019, which ended on a high with Seth Rollins claiming back the Universal Championship. So that was what went down in SummerSlam for 2019, and we will move on to the NXT UK takeover that took place a couple of weeks ago when they had their next UK takeover, which took place in Cardiff not so long ago. So let's take a look at that.